Most of us get up every morning, go about our daily routine, ignorant pretty much of what really is going on in the outside world. We go to work, we go to school, and we live our daily lives as if nothing is going on. But sometimes we might forget that our country right now is at war. At war in Afghanistan. We've been there 10 years now, 10 very long years. And it's been 2 wars, now thankfully it's just down to 1. But we need to get out of there. The war in Afghanistan has been a long and costly conflict. It has added to our national debt. It's taken thousands of American lives. It has posed the question of a possible draft. And it has also put heavy economic tolls on people. Things that affect us in our everyday lives. My family has a long and dedicated history in the military. In fact, my father in 2005 was called up to go to Afghanistan to serve with the Army. I know the hardships, and I learned and studied many things about the military, its history, and strategy, through my course in high school and college, as well as the books that I've read. That's how I can affirmatively tell you that this war has no end, and it will not end unless we do something about it. Today I'm going to talk to you about the problems this war has caused. I'm going to tell you exactly how they started, and I'm going to tell you about the economic, strategic, and the human cost that it is taking our country. Financial toll has increased our national debt, as I had stated earlier. $13 trillion right now is the debt that our nation owes to various institutions and organizations. And $1 trillion of that is from both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and trying to get troops out of Iraq and put more troops in Afghanistan. Sending troops, tanks, planes, and supplies is not a very cheap procedure. It costs an unimaginable amount of money to be able to do this and to continually support them throughout 10 years, 10 long years. Medical supplies, medical care for our troops is another thing that costs a lot of money. Putting our troops in toll like that is extremely dangerous. And infrastructure. In Afghanistan, much of the money that we have been spending, tax money that the government has been spending, has been going to rebuild Afghanistan's infrastructure. Villages, towns, and cities have been destroyed because of war and the ongoing conflict. The government tells us that this will one day be paid back by the Afghan people. That is not the truth. They do not have the ability to pay us back for at least another 20 years. 20 to 21. Our government believed that if they kept throwing money at this problem, eventually we would win and we would overcome the enemy. But there's one more problem. It takes more than money to win a war. It takes strategy. In September 2001, the United States entered a war on terrorism. We were attacked by the terrorist forces of Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. 10 years later, and 100,000 more troops are sitting on the ground in Afghanistan, actively fighting and combating terrorist forces. There is no endgame scenario for this. The government, the president, and several other political figures have told us that they've been campaigning to try and end the war. Yet we saw in the last 2 years, they authorized a surge of troops to go to Afghanistan, adding 30 more thousand troops, adding to the total what is now almost 100,000 U.S. troops and military forces in Afghanistan. The purpose of this war was to go in, find Osama bin Laden, and eliminate his terrorist network. As of right now, 10 years later, we have not found Osama bin Laden. We beat the Taliban, his forces, but the mastermind of September 11th still eludes us to this day. And guerrilla warfare. This is a tactic used by the Afghan forces to combat our troops. The United States soldiers are trained, equipped, and prepared to fight an organized army. They're not prepared to fight regular people on the street dressed in plain clothes. Guerrilla soldiers use no uniforms. They do not fight in organized armies. And they do not follow any sort of tactics. They do not have strongholds. They are in the same cities and towns that our troops patrol one day, think they've conquered the next, and then the day after that, they're right back there again. This enemy has a deep-seated hatred for the West and the people of the United States. They are fighting not only for their homes, but for their religious beliefs as well. But perhaps the highest cost to this nation is not necessarily the economic cost or the problems of strategy, but it is the human cost. According to USA Today, since 2001, when the war in Afghanistan started, we have lost 1,413 soldiers in Afghanistan, and that's not even counting the death toll that was in the Iraq War, which is much larger. Fighting an army that looks like average civilians is something I have told you in my earlier part of the speech, that they are fighting guerrillas, which means our soldiers are not actively prepared or trained to fight these men. And even if they are, you're going down the street, imagine yourself as a soldier. You're going down the street and you see several people dressed in plain clothes. You really don't think much of it until one passes by you, pulls out a gun, and starts shooting at you. No amount of training in the world or in military boot camp can prepare you for this. And now I'm going to talk about another problem our soldiers are facing, which isn't just the guerrilla warfare, but it's something called IEDs. IEDs are improvised explosive devices, and they're responsible for much of the death toll in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Slide. What you see behind me are what I had talked about guerrilla warfare. These gentlemen behind me are dressed in the average clothing that most people in that part of the world would be dressed in. But as you can see, they're actively carrying weapons. These guerrillas place these IEDs on street corners, in places that frequent traffic, they're even their own people, but they actively are known for when and where the soldiers are going to be. They place these IEDs. So it's very hard to find exactly who is doing this because they are dressed as average people, and they fight dressed as average people. But since 2009, 80% of all IED-related attacks on U.S. convoys resulted in at least one United States soldier being killed. They purposely put these devices on the sides of roads where our U.S. convoys drive through, and they detonate them as soon as they go by. Slide. This is the end result of an IED attack on a U.S. armored Humvee vehicle. As you can see, the entire front part of this vehicle was destroyed because of an IED. They're extremely hard to detect, and it's very difficult for our soldiers to be able to prepare actively for them. Even though our soldiers actively patrol roads to clear them of IEDs, the enemy puts them back the next day as soon as they're cleared. The war in Afghanistan has gone on for far too long. It's hurting our nation, its economy, and our people. Politicians tell us that this war will soon end, and they have voted for it, and they continue to campaign against it. However, sending a surge of 30,000 additional soldiers into a war zone is not what I call withdrawing. They say it's going to help us get out of there faster, to have more troops on the ground, to get the job done quicker. That's not going to happen. That's just prolonging the conflict. But let's not forget those men and women who are actively fighting in Afghanistan. They are serving our country despite anybody's political views. They're doing their job for us, and for our country. But it's time for it to end. Thank you.